Welcome to another Nonsense Wars production. Today I can finally cover my 1:48 scale Siemens Charger, my first model of a contemporary locomotive. Like with the D2 and X10, I actually wanted to build the SC-44 instead of the MP36, but among other things, modeling the Charger proved challenging, and I proceeded with finishing the partly completed Caltrain unit instead. Eventually, I decided I had no interest in building prototypical bi-level cars for the MP36, and I started looking at the SC-44 again. Siemens started building Chargers for Amtrak in 2016, and many have gone to commuter railways as well. I like it for its European styling. It's technically a German locomotive after all, and I think it stands out among chunkier domestic designs like the F40, the P40, and even the aforementioned MP36. The Charger also has far more prototypical rolling stock options, and the P85s can fake Amfleet or heritage cars much more easily than they can fake bi-levels. While I had trouble on the nose of the MP36, I had much more trouble on the nose of the SC-44, to the point that I originally gave up. I went back to it several times over the course of more than a year, and I still couldn't find a design I liked without looking at other models of other engines, something I basically never do. The current nose still isn't perfect, but it's at least as accurate as that of the MP36, and I like this one more since it has fewer gaps. I want to point out some other design choices, starting with the windshield. I made this with a stack of plates, and it might seem logical to make it less noisy with bricks, but the 5-plate height complicates things. If I use a brick anywhere in the stack, I still need to pad it with 2 plates, and the texture becomes inconsistent. Between noise and inconsistency, I chose noise here, but it could really go either way. These grills on the sides should technically match the body color as well, but I've made them from dark bluish gray. The problem comes from these 3x3 sections. I couldn't fill this space with 1x2 texture bricks, so I needed to use plates. Light bluish gray plates don't show up that easily on an LBG body, even though it works okay in LDD, so I made them darker. Now the rest of the grills also need to match, but this seems okay in general. The big grille has a similar problem. The X-frame part does not match the prototype that well, but I could not find a way to make a more convincing representation out of other bricks. Unfortunately, the girder flat out doesn't come in light gray, so I used dark gray backed with a light grille. At the very least, this suggests the right shapes and colors, and oftentimes modeling needs to resort to cartooning anyway. Now let's talk mechanicals. The MP36 had a lot of power going to a single bogie and subsequently slipped quite a bit. I wanted to try to mitigate this on the Charger. In another upcoming project, I devised a way to drive 2 bogies with a single motor by running a drive shaft over the battery box. This actually worked well mechanically, but sadly not practically. Counterintuitively, I almost want the buggy motor to slip. A stalled or even heavily loaded buggy motor easily trips the overcurrent protection on a V2 receiver, and the locomotive stops entirely. We actually saw this in train pull with the MP36, but it didn't manifest in practice since I mostly pulled lighter loads. Unfortunately, the pair of P85s, as built with Technic axles, created enough load to stall 2 powered bogies right out of the gate. Even a single, probably slipping, powered bogie eventually had trouble, and this entire situation ultimately convinced me to outfit the P85s with the bearing wheels. Completely unsurprisingly, that configuration ran perfectly well, even on slight inclines and tight curves. In retrospect, I could have also run the RC equipment I used in the MP36, but I initially didn't want to do that because of how I built the drivetrain. In the U30 video, I talked about building a drivetrain that I could remove as a single piece. I didn't quite make it for the SC-44, but I managed to integrate everything besides the receiver. Using RC equipment would have required breaking this up, but I might just do it anyway since 2 powered bogies has proven impractical. The bogies themselves also come off relatively easily, though I question the usefulness of that feature. Finally, I just want to show some Carnage from the MP36. It only ran for 2 or 3 meetings, but the vertical drive shafts already had significant damage. This probably calls for some lubrication on the charger, but perhaps after some drivetrain rebuild. On that note, this is the end of the video, so have a nice day.